damit daleggiare. Daman, damit daleggiare. Daman, damit daleggiare.
Hello, Internet. My name is John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, a 10-year user of R for standard, typical statistical applications. And for the last 7 or 8 years, I've also been using R to execute entire projects, to make presentations and papers and reports. And so every week, I hold these open office hour sessions and have collaborators. And I forgot tonight, I was kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off today. So I forgot to put the link out to my collaborators. So it's probably just going to be me tonight, unfortunately. I know Diego in particular, he had an idea for a session coming up here, so he'll be joining us again within the next couple of weeks. But anyway, so I get together with hopefully, usually, some friends and collaborators on these projects, and we just kind of hang out for an hour and make ourselves available if there's anyone else out there who's interested in this and just wants some minds to bounce ideas off of. Um, we always give priority to if someone stumbles across this and they want to get started or they're already doing it, but maybe have run into some obstacle. Always give priority to those kind of shared problem solving projects. The original intent of this weekly live stream was to problem solve issues that people are having as they're trying to craft these products, because there's always issues that you run into. So rather than having a canned kind of tutorial, you can have a little back and forth with different ways to solve issues. So that'll always have a priority as long as I see the question if it comes up as a comment. But in the meantime, we've also been covering there's different features and different capabilities that these platforms have. Now, we call it using R for authoring, but really we're utilizing some package capabilities here. So an entire software suite of Quarto, which is kind of the newer authoring platform that's published by Posit, the company that creates a lot of this free open source. I don't know if it's technically classified as open source, but freely made available tools that the Public Benefit Corporation Posit actually puts out there for all of us. And so every week we've been coming up with a new feature that maybe we've encountered or heard about but haven't fully explored. So this week we'll take a look at animations, and animations are going to be specific to slides. when I mentioned um, when I mentioned my collaborators, I started to look here in the back room, and since I didn't invite anybody, I have a couple of options for kind of virtual friends. Let's see, we get that works. We'll just use our two little kitties tonight, I think. So tonight we're gonna first recap. Sorry, I'm gonna have to do something about the early morning throat that I've been having here when I jump on this session. It's actually kind of nice. The sun is out, so I appreciate the whatever it's called, daylight savings or the opposite of daylight savings. I'm not sure which one we just went into, but whichever one gives me more daylight, I appreciate it. So it's nice actually seeing a little lighter background in back of me instead of the typical just dark cave. So tonight we'll take a look first at what we did last week and present that again in kind of a more linear, easily digestible format. And then we'll get into tonight's exploration, which is slide animations. And I've done these before, but I haven't spent a lot of time or attention or energy on them. So we'll delve a little deeper into them and see how those are executed. Before we do that, let's get to our transition into what happened last week.
When Rocky's friend Bullwinkle inherited a mine from his uncle, little did he think it would lead to this. But then again, neither did anybody else.
Boris, darling, what a wonderful stunt.
What do you talk, Natasha? I didn't did it.
But if not you, then who?
Exactly what Rocky was wondering as he shouted.
Can you see who the pilot is, Bullwinkle?
Yeah, he's just a run-of-the-mill mysterious stranger.
It was true. A masked figure was at that moment frantically twisting the controls.
Up, sailor on, stabilize the elevator, rig for diving, dinghy, prepare to ditch.
Boy, that is a confused mysterious stranger.
That voice is awful familiar.
Of course, that was me. I just did that easy.
No, I mean the pilot's voice. Look out, here we go again.
Right. So I was pulling those transitions from a huge compilation of the entire season one of Rocky and Bullwinkle. And we went through the entire season one. So that was the first episode, according to the non-traditional YouTube site that I'm pulling it from. That was the first episode of season two, which is actually it's a, the content you can't tell because it's a direct, it's in direct lineage from the end of season one. The same story is actually going on. I think that's Admiral, I forget the guy's name, Wrongway maybe? It's something, it's an onomatopoeia, is that right? No, onomatopoeia is, it sounds like something, right? Anyway, his name is consistent with his behavior, which is not great. So last week we looked into code annotation, and again, if you're interested in this, there's a hyperlink. There's a lot of hyperlinks hidden on these slides as I tend to author them, and I just kind of dawned on me that I do this in class as well, and I don't necessarily tell the students that. I just assume that they're going to find it, but I should be a little better about that. So this particular this particular link is hidden because the font and the font color that I use is kind of hiding it. But the code annotation title, there's a hyperlink in there to a help page, a Quarto help page that discusses some of this stuff as well. And last week we just kind of did two things, and so this is more R-ish than we usually handle on these weekly sessions. I am more hyper focused on the end product in terms of a slide deck or a report or a website or a book or whatever that end product might be. So we haven't been spending a whole lot of time on the coding bits, the actual part of R that probably most people think of when they think about using the program. But so code annotations are very specific to the traditional use of R in terms of scripting. And so these are ways to accompany your script with some description. And that description, the thought is it's going to be helpful to other people who might want to use your script, who might want to learn from your script. And so one of the things that we took a look at, and I've been using this I've been kind of pulling back the layers of the depth to which I've been using this particular form of annotation. So the line number coding is kind of a neat feature, but there's a bit of it that from the initial Quarto 1. I think it was pre 1.4. So there was a Quarto version released that was pre 1.4, and the code line number sequencing worked great. And since then, in subsequent releases of Quarto, I've had more issues with the progression of code line highlighting in these revealed JS slides. Now, I haven't submitted an issue because I haven't delved into it enough, and before I let the wonderfully kind of accepting team, when I say accepting, I'm saying they are wanting feedback. But before I deliver feedback, I want to make sure I fully understand it myself, and I haven't explored it all that deeply. But the chunk specifications of code line numbers, and then in double quotes, you can just put the numbers that you want highlighted. You can separate by commas. If you want a range, you use the single dash. But that vertical pipe, the vertical pipe is saying, I want line, well, what this is saying right now on the left and highlighted in pink is it's saying, give me line 1 highlighted first, which you see on the right. It's happening. But then it's saying, once I advance this slide, then give me lines 7 and 8. And so there's a subtle difference here, and it probably isn't that earth-shatteringly important, I guess, but we're seeing a little lightening of script beyond just 7 and 8. Now, in the index numbers, if we just look at the numbers themselves along the left-hand vertical, the difference isn't all that noticeable, but in the script itself, and in this big chunk of script, sorry, I'm going to make people seasick by doing this, but there is more of a universal lightening. And so there's a bleeding through, I guess, is what I'm struggling to communicate. There's a bleeding through when we're using these progressions, and it seems to be across browsers. So Edge, Chrome, Firefox. I didn't test Firefox, but it also tends to be across releases of Quarto. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. It's not something that I recognized, as I said, in earlier releases of Quarto. So I might do a little digging into that and see if I can figure out what's going on there and whether that's intentional or whether that's something that maybe could be improved upon. Now, this one actually isn't bad, just a little bleeding through on lines 3 through 6 as I kind of rock back and forth here. What I have seen additionally is kind of a blurring and a blurring of the content itself, and that's more troublesome. That's something that obviously would interfere with learning as opposed to facilitating learning. So we don't want that. So anyway, that's one way to highlight your code is simply to do some line highlighting. And this progression is actually probably more in line with what we're going to talk about tonight in terms of animations. So you can consider this to be a form of animation. It's subtly changing the content across slide progressions, and we'll be focusing on that tonight as well. I didn't intend to do code line highlighting, but in retrospect, it's probably a good sequence to follow this with an actual animation, because to me, this is a form of animation. Then the other thing that we took a look at that doesn't ever seem to have any wonkiness is the standard code line annotation. And the code line annotation is indicated by hashtag angled brackets and then numbers, and you start numbering at 1, and then you just go consecutively. Outside your code chunk, you're going to want to put the content of the annotation. And so when you render that information, as we see on the left here, on the right. So the left is a representation of code, the right is a representation of the rendering of that code. Upon interacting with the annotation Q, which in this case is just looks like a billiard ball with a number one in it. If I actually hit that, you'll see that the note shows up. If I deselect it, the note goes away. We played with this a couple of different ways of interacting with that. You can interact upon hover, which is what I had as my preferred way of interacting with these notes for, I don't know, I guess we're on session 68. I think I just switched it tonight for the first time. So for 67 sessions, I've just been doing interact upon hover. You can also append below, so it's always visible, the note, so it looks like a footnote at that point. If you render as a PDF, it's going to render as a footnote, so it's going to have that by default. But in these Reveal.js presentations and HTML files, so if you're rendering to an HTML product, you have the option of hovering or clicking, and I changed it to click. I think the click command is actually select, not click. Click would probably, I would imagine, in a room full of people on a team deciding what to call the command, that would be overruled. I would vote for it, but I would get overruled. Okay, so that was last week, annotations, and then today we're going to take a look at animations, and this should be fun. I think the first thing we'll do is a direct segue continuation of last week in terms of code annotation. And again, there should be, I usually put hyperlinks on here, so there should be a hyperlink on the animate if you missed that. Just the slide title above Snoopy's head here. You click on that, you'll access a help page for what they're talking about with animation. And so we can animate, let's just take a look here. Can animate elements. I guess that's the most general way to think about this. And an element could be text, it could be a picture, it could, whatever it is that you're rendering is an element. So we need to add the auto animate attribute to two adjacent slides. So that's kind of a key feature here is I'm going to have two slides that appear upon interaction. They'll appear as one. So in a sense, using fragments is animation because I am going from one state of the slide to a second state of the slide. We're going to see that this is another way to change what a slide renders like without using fragments. So it's in this particular case, a fragment would be used within the same slide. With animation, we're going to generate two different slides that have content that we want to interact with each other in some way. So to give a better idea, here's an example. And so the nice thing about this example, the nice thing about this Quarto help page is oftentimes they'll have the script itself, which is in this grayed out box. And then they'll have the appearance of that script as it is rendered. And so we see there's a very little bit of text here, just says animating content, but there's a styling fence here. And so that styling fence is not indicating much with the first rendering. But the second rendering, it says blow that up to 3 times the size and change the color to red. This margin top, we'll see what effect that has, but the effect that we're expecting it to have is this little white bit above animating content. It's 100 pixels right now. If it's going to be 200 pixels, my expectation is that's going to jump down a little bit. So yeah, so there's the animation that happens. And again, these are two different slides. So one thing I want to play with that I haven't checked, but I've been, for class, for example, I've been putting the slide number in the bottom corner of my slides for class because it's a useful reference. If a student has a question, you can say, go to slide 4. I'm wondering if we do that with animation, even a simple animation like this, what's actually going to happen if it's going to show up as two different slides. And I would assume it would, but we'll see. So there's a little description of what's it doing. what's it doing, what it's doing. There's also code animations, and this is where I thought we would jump off because it's a pretty clean. It's a pretty clean segue from what we did last week. And again, there's two different code chunks here. You see, I'm sorry, not code chunks. There's two different slides specified here by the two hashtag notation, and they're not given titles. They're just using the command of auto animate true. Now this one looks like it's not specified 100% correct. They're not using the double quote convention. So we'll see if that's necessary, if that works, if this little bit of script maybe doesn't work if we render it. So we'll definitely try to render it. But you see the difference here in terms of the two slides is on the first one, there are 3 lines, the 3 meaningful lines. One is a comment that says, we're going to fill in the spot we created for a plot. Then there's the actual plot command with another comment, but no actual rendering plot specifications. So the specifications of the rendering plot are coming in on that second slide. And so across those two animations, the first slide we're expecting to be fairly empty in terms of code content. And then when we switch over, you see this nice filled in. And so again, it almost operates like a fragment. One difference, I guess, that you can note is just the rendering space. So the plotting space that we see here, it's 8 lines deep, and this matters for code because the verticality of the code chunk here is changing quite a bit from 4 to 8, and that's an important part of the animation that we wouldn't get if we tried to do something with just fragments. So the auto animate can also without your specification, it can arrange elements by internal logic. And so internal logic here, we have one word and then we have 2 words on the second slide. And the animation is just making accommodation for that. And so I know on PowerPoint, boy, it's been a while now, but when I first started using PowerPoint, that was a feature that I was using was animation across elements. Something we can do here for sure as well. And then there's a little bit of description that yes, when you navigate between, we will do our best to automatically find matching elements. I know we can also give them IDs to match, and I've done that. It looks like that's what's being done here. So we have a data ID, box 1, box 2, box 3. And then we're going to identify those same boxes on the second slide. Now this one is actually changing from a box or a circle. So that's just HTML specification for a box or a circle. Looks like a box. And then here it's HTML specification for a circle. And so the transition there. And that the important part of that is going to be the data ID. So the data ID is saying box 1 on slide 1 should be matched with box 1 on slide 2 because these are just made up HTML elements, even though to us, to humans, the blue square should match the blue circle. There's nothing internally to a computer that says that those things should match each other. And then the settings, let's see. Now these I have not played with, so looks like easing. We'll play with that. Is that probably the speed at which it does it? Okay, so we'll play with that. I'm not sure what that does. Duration. So with combination of easing, I'm wondering if that's some speed-based kind of setting. Delay. I have played with this before, so I have played with that animation delay. I didn't like it, but we can revisit it. Absent in terms of ID, I guess, is the default. So here they're acknowledging that fragments are kind of like animations. At least they're being presented in a similar location of this help page. So let's actually start with just what they start with, which is simple text. Now they've identified where they want things to go, but we can do that too. So I'm going to use, let's see, I think we can still use that Casey file. Poor Casey, he hasn't been here for a while, but we're using his empty QMD file as kind of our playground. And so last week we had some code chunks that we wanted to play with and annotate. I'm going to get rid of those. And I'm just going to paste in what we have on the help page. So on the help page, there's only 2 slides: auto animate true, and then the style margin. So this should replicate what we saw on the Quarto help page. I'm just going to render that. We'll blow it up. And it went straight to page 2 for me, but yeah, that looks the same as what our expectation was. There's my title page. It does render as 2 different pages. Let's put page numbers on there and see what they show up like. So in order to do that, I could pull from a previous slide deck that has slide numbers, but I'll just Quarto slide number. We'll see if we can find. And again, this probably looks very dinosaur-like using Google. I don't know, a better way to do this is probably to use one of the AI machines. I still am kind of reserving that for special cases. I don't know why. There's a little tiny bit more of an obstacle to access those, but it's not so much that I shouldn't be using it, I guess. But that's my level of interaction with those AIs at this point. It's kind of just like a modern Google, and probably shouldn't be saying that, but that's kind of how I've been using it. So slide numbers to menu items, yes, that's what we want. So let's see where we want to specify that. Slide numbers. So it looks like it's a slide number true. That's fairly easy. I know there's different placements of it. So I guess we'll just start with the default here. So because we're getting a little more specific with not just default features, I'm going to hard return, tab over for the type of product that we're wanting to produce after the format line. And then it's slide number true, and that's going to be tabbed over again. And let's see what happens. We're looking just anywhere on this preview for a little bit of a difference. There we go, 3 out of 3 in the lower right. So I'm looking at, it does appear. So it appears on both screens. And yeah, it is. So, you know, I don't know if that bothers anyone. I guess if we're truly doing animation, the fact that it's a different slide number, I mean, it makes sense, but kind of the magic of an animation is it looks like it's the same slide, right? So acknowledging explicitly that it's not, I guess I don't know if I like that, but we can, theoretically, we can do all kinds of different stuff with this. Let's see, what else do we want to do? We should be able to add different fonts as well. Now that's something that it's something I hadn't thought of, but I'm curious. This might be difficult actually. We'll see if it works. I'm going to put in a CSS. I'll put in a CSS chunk, and I'm going to grab. I recommended this a few weeks ago in terms of a way to read in fonts. So I'm going to grab my commands for that in terms of just accessing. And then we'll see if we can specify font changes. So it's just an import URL command. And then you find the font that you're interested in. Again, Google's getting some advertising tonight. But this one, let's try that. I've never seen it before, but big shoulders stencil. Patrick King. I know a Patrick King. Pretty sure he did not write this. Sorry, I'm trying to make this so it's visible on both screens. I hate that autofit. I don't think I ever figured out how to effectively turn that off. My windows aren't agreeing with me here. I'm trying to make it big enough so people can see. So the command on line 9 here is just import URL, and this is CSS. So I'm going to, instead of dancing script, which is one that I use kind of frequently, we'll use big shoulders stencil. And then I'm going to write a little CSS as well. And we want a font family of big shoulders stencil. And that doesn't look quite right, so it's probably got to be in double quotes or single quotes. So let's try that. Thing about CSS is you need that semicolon at the end of a line so it knows that you're done. Let's try putting it in a different file first of all and see if it actually works. So I'll just say hello there. And I'm going to use a bracketed span on this. So we're going to apply, what did we call it? Stencil. You can call these whatever you want when you're making your own CSS like this. I think that's called a tag. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's a tag. So one of the things that I've noticed across just kind of some of these playing with single features at a time is, I don't think that did anything, did it? Didn't like something. One of the things I've noticed is it can kind of get confused with whether the information that you intend to use is going to be predominantly R or Python. And so one of the things I saw there on the rendering was that it was going through and expecting Jupyter code instead. Well, it was expecting format that isn't in the that isn't consistent with how we want to render it. So the way that we're structuring things comes from this R kind of tradition, and so so in order to get it to work the way that I know it works using R as a compiler, we need to force it and tell it that yes, we're in fact kind of coming from this R tradition. And so this engine knitter is something that we needed to do in order to get, I don't know why it worked for the CSS, because CSS should be agnostic to that, but our CSS was fine, it just wasn't rendering like we wanted it to without us specifying the engine that we want to render our document. Okay, so stencil works. Now the curiosity that I have is let's get rid of this styling here and see what happens if we just try to, well, I can keep the span there and just apply this is a fence div, not a bracketed span, but I can keep it in terms of the 3: and curly bracket format. I can keep it there, and it should still apply the stencil formatting. I'm really curious if the internal logic is enough to make it look like anything. And it doesn't look like it did. Yeah, really didn't like that. So it does actually do it is applying the script that we were interested in. It just didn't have any animation. So we can try, let's see if we can try giving it a tag and that does anything. I'm also going to change, um, I'm also going to blow this up a little bit so it's easier to see. So the stencil one should be larger now. Now that looks like a little more animation, doesn't it? So it does look like there is a little matching there. It's just okay. So it just wasn't coming through with the font, the font specifically, and that makes a lot of sense. That's something that we just kind of added after the fact. Now we could also just change the color of that. So let's change the font color. And that might just be color, I guess. Should take hex codes. Should we do badass again? Let's see if that works. So what I'm looking for is I'm trying to see if that color change is a little more subtle. So the font change itself was pretty immediate. So the font change was we have standard, it's probably Arial. We have Arial, 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 and boom, we have big shoulder stencil. And the curiosity here is, are we going from black, 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 badass? Or are we going black, little less black, little less black, little badass-ish, and then totally badass? And it looks like it's doing a transition, so it slowly gets to totally badass. So that's interesting. Okay, let's, I don't know why, but I'm having fun with the animating fonts aspect of this. Let's play with some of those features that I mentioned I'm not familiar with. So there was an easing, right? What the heck is the easing? Let's see if we can find what easing is. So we can transition from size, color, background. Could do that, I guess. Code chunks, we do want to do that for sure. And then the easing is what we wanted to play with just to see what it does. And what says they describe it. So you can override such as easing and duration. Oh, okay. Doesn't say what the other values of ease is. There's a ease in and out. Let's see if this help page is helpful at all. So I'm just trying to look to see what there we go. It looks like we have 4 of them. Oh, I'm glad we checked it. It's a cubic Bezier. Sorry about that. I guess it's better than a cubic brazier, maybe. I don't know. But, oh, we have more down here. Step start, step end. I wonder if these values are all good within Quarto. Ease in, ease out, ease in, out. So with the ease, it looks like we start slowly, accelerate sharply, and then go slow at the end. So that makes sense in terms of the transition speed. This is a lot more technically and specifically worded than me saying speed, but starts quick, slows down, goes quick. So, or starts slow, said the opposite. Starts slow, gets quicker, and then ends slow. We could also do ease in, ease out. Okay, so let's try that. I'm not sure if we get other. Wow. Okay, so it looks like there's some more jarring ones as well. But we'll try the. I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I got so many. Oh, doggone thing. I have so many windows. Oh, go away. Ah, stupid help pages. You're not helping. So I'm going to take a screenshot of those values just because I have too many tabs open. So we'll try, what is it? Auto animate easing. Probably goes here. I'm not sure. But we'll try one of those values. Ease out. I don't know. Doesn't look like it's going to like that. I don't know that I'm noticing any difference there. So what are some of our other ones? Ease in, out. Now it's possible that we need to nest this within a different animation kind of thing. It's also possible that it's not going to work in our YAML. So let's move it down here. And I don't know, I wonder if we need it on both of these. Probably only need it on the second one. And then I'm guessing it's an equals, not a colon, because it's usually equals in the fence divs and the bracketed spans. I don't know that I'm noticing anything there. So let's see. I mean, it's not throwing an error. See what else we have here that we can do. And the other thing is, again, I don't know what these cubic brasiers are, but the numbers themselves don't look all that different. So it's possible that it's just we're affecting a change, but it's so subtle that we're just not noticing that. I guess we can try one of these other ones. I'm a little skeptical here, but let's try it. Oh, did work. So it just jumped. So the step start just jumped, which doesn't look like a transition at all. So we are having an effect, but again, it's just like such a subtle effect. I'm not sure I would use it. Ease in, out. How is that any different than ease? I sound like I'm mad. I'm not mad. I'm happy that this is available. I'm just not so sure what difference it has. Maybe we need to put it on both. We ended up spending the entire session on 2 words. Animating content. Yeah, I really don't see a lot of difference there between those easing effects. So I get a very subtle effect. Let's do some code at least, just so we can get something other than just the animating content bit of this. So let's do our own code, and I think we should be able to put titles in these as well. You just want the title to be well. If the title's not the same, it'll morph into something different, I would imagine. But we can call it code slide. I'm going to give it those curly bracket specifications of auto animate true on 2 adjacent slides to let it know that there should be matched content there. And again, that's something we haven't seen as a title. I shouldn't have any effect. We should be okay. Now should be able to just put in. It's putting in CSS now since I wrote that. But we'll put in an R chunk. We'll do an echo equals true, which is going to be important for us. Eval. I wonder if we want to just not evaluate it. It'll be easier. And then let's put in some code. So we'll look for cool R code. How about that? Create a meme. Well, when I first started teaching R, I was trying to get students interested, and I would try to find as many just like creative applications that I could. And so the craziest one that I found, and I know other professors have found it as well, but I haven't been able to find it since, is ordering a pizza. So I don't know if it was a package or what, but I know at some point that was an option. Now I just put a bunch of this code in. It doesn't really matter what it is because we're not gonna run it, but it's a long bit of code. So my thought was that we could put this in twice and take some content out of the top one and see what it looks like in terms of transitioning to the second one. Now the online guide showed the code wrapping down, so I wonder if we can actually put code on top. Well, we'll try that second, so let's not do that right now. So we'll try kind of what they did first, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code in our first chunk, and then about double that in the second one. We'll see what that looks like. Now I'm tempted to play with the easing again because maybe it looks different with code. Here's my first code slide. Yeah, ooh, look at that on the right. You see that? I swear it was red the first time I did it. Oh, cat's in the way. Get out of there, kitty cat. Sorry, kitty cat. Let's get the what I was seeing, what the UFOs were seeing. No, it looks like the UFO is shooting a laser at that poor cow on the right, doesn't it? Cow on the right, you're about to be a steak. Sorry. Okay, but I kind of like that. And it counts for you, so there's 14 lines. We can try some of our annotation with this as well. The other thing I wanted to do, as I just mentioned, was let's remove the top bit instead of the bottom bit from our first chunk and see what that renders like, because I actually have no idea. I assume it's going to look similar. It's just going to be less intuitive for the viewer to see where the new stuff is. So it does a nice job of that fading in with the new, and maybe that's where our easing, it wasn't as visible with just the text, but here it is kind of nice. Now let's try some code line numbers as well. I think I'm going to put the top back in because it just visually it's smoother that way. And we should have looked and seen what this code was too. I guess I'm not sure what it's trying to create a meme. I guess we know that. So let's do a code line numbers just on the bottom one. And I'm gonna do some of the top ones. So the top ones should be, what is it? Top ones should be lines 1 through 7, unless I didn't copy them the same, which I guess I didn't copy them the same. Let's try to do just these middle, or this middle one here. The middle one should be line 4. We'll see. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so in combination with each other, I actually really like that. So I really like how line 4 just stands out even with the larger chunks. So I wonder what the transition would look like if we do lines 1 and 2 on the first slide and then move to we can do 4 and 5 on the second one. So I'm going to go to my previous slide and I'm going to do 1 and 2 and we'll do 4 and 5. So a couple of tweaks across those auto animated slides. So 1 and 2 as expected. I mean, it's just a jump, so it's not a big. Now there is a bit of a slow reveal on the bottom ones, so it might be more exciting to also do 11 through 14. Let's try that before we quit. And again, the through specification in these code line numbers, syntax is a dash instead of a colon. It's kind of slow. I don't know why that amuses me so much, but so there's more hidden beneath the reveal there as we get to lines 11 through 14. Okay, so animations. It's again one of the main things I wanted to see was the lower right hand slide numbers and to see if those are actually coming up as distinct slides, and they do. So the fact that they're coming up as distinct slides, I don't know. It doesn't, I guess, deter me, but for some reason I'm a little less like psyched about it. Okay. Anyway, slide animations. So fun stuff. You can actually, again, I would consider the progression of. Let's do a quick one before I quit. Let's do 1 then 2. By using the vertical pipe on the first slide, and then we'll jump to 4 and 5 on the second one. So in combination, I can see kind of some of these fragments and progressing code line number highlightings. I can see how all these, now this is operating a lot more like what we want it to. So there's no bleeding of color. If you were with me at the beginning, there's no bleeding of color. There's no blurring. So this is operating great. So it might be an interaction with the theme that I have, and I have so much of the goop in my slide presentations. It's got to be me. It's got to be me. So this works great. So I could see this being a useful teaching tool. Really, just kind of go one by one. We can even add some annotations here if we wanted to say, hey, look here, this is important. And I think that's going to appear at the bottom because I think that's the default. So we would have to override that if we wanted to. Yeah. Now, one of the things I don't like about that default, so let's do it quick before I end. Let's do I'm going to switch that to one of the other options, because what's happening in the rendering right now is there's no interaction with this one billiard ball symbol here. The nice thing about interacting with that one billiard ball symbol is you can get some visual feedback on what lines it's specifically referring to. And so I think we want to probably change that to a different type of annotation. And so I'm going to use either select or hover, I think. Let's do hover, maybe. And I should be able to do it on the chunk, but we should be able to do it in the YAML as well. Let's see if that works. It squished it, didn't it? It squished it, but it is, that's these things. I don't know why they're acting the way they're acting. So it's squished, but the visual feedback that I'm getting is now identifying only line 8. So the reason that's important is if I went back in here and expanded this to include not just in my script, not just line 64 and 60, not only line 64, but also line 65. Then in my rendered document, when we take a look, you'll see that the information you get upon hover now covers both of those lines, which in my render document are of course not 64 through 66 or whatever I said previously, but it's a much shorter bit of code, so it's identifying the entire block that you're interested in highlighting. And so hover or select might be a little more suitable for what we would use a feature like this for. Okay, cool. So code animations, text animations, and then in combination with annotation as well. Teaching R, if I would have used this when I first started teaching R, I can see that it would have helped, I think, quite a bit. And the hover feature in particular, it'd be nice to give students some feedback on why something is important, but only upon their seeking it out, right? So it's like it's a helpful hint that's there, but only if sought. So those that wanted to try to solve and fail on their own could still do so, but those that wanted a little more of a, I don't know if there's any of those students that still exist, but those that want a little bit of a hint could get it there as well. Okay, that's it for tonight. So thank you for being here, and we're gonna keep going with this. So I'll be here next week on, I don't know, we'll find some other feature to cover. If you have an idea, if there's something that you want to see covered, drop me a note, leave a comment, and I'll be happy to take a look at it and try to figure out how it could be leveraged and used in an authoring application. All right, good night.